Welcome to The Good Ride. I'm James Beastie, and today we're talking about the Burton Highshot X 2027 Step-On Boot Review. To give you a short summary, it has some changes with some positives and negatives. It's much stiffer than it used to be. It was very soft last year. They went from a double BOA with one BOA for the upper, one for the lower. Now they have one for the entire outer, and then one connected to this internal ankle harness. So if you're like me and you like upper and lower adjustability, you're not gonna like this new upgrade. That blue internal ankle harness causes pressure points. It's just very large and folds down on your foot no matter how you tighten it. I still don't feel a lot of ankle support. And lastly, there isn't a lot of symmetrical response. The toe side is slower response-wise than the heel side. But on the positive side, the stiffer flex does add support from last year and makes the response a little more symmetrical versus last year. There's still that good lateral flex from tip to tail, and it has a more traditional snowboard boot feel than the first generation of step-on boots out there. So it really comes down to whether or not that large blue internal ankle harness is going to be a deal breaker for you or not. For some, like me, it is. For others, it isn't. I rode these 2 days and primarily tested them with my Yes Greats Union Atlas Step-On, Burton Genesis X EST Step-On, and in the same day, I compared them against my Nitro Profile Step-On TLS boots. Conditions were like they were most of the year. We had a really bad year snow-wise, so every day felt kind of like a spring day with firm in the morning, going to medium soft, to pretty soft in the afternoon. And this is an honest, objective review for you, the consumer. Burton has no say in what I say, and I can do this thanks to this wonderful community support, and also thanks to our sponsor, Blower Board Shop. They've been selling to snowboarders longer than most resorts have been allowing snowboarders. Actually, Jake Burton was their rep when they first started selling snowboards in the 80s. That's how long they've been around. They have a local and a larger online presence. So if you want to support honest, objective content and a great shop, click through our links to Blower Board Shop and buy something. It would be greatly appreciated. Let's talk weight. These are 2 pounds, 6 ounces, which is on the lighter side for a snowboard boot. But then you compare it with something like the Cartel X Step-On EST at 1 pound, 9 ounces. That's excessively light. You have a very light overall package. But even if you pair it up with the Union Atlas Step-On at 1 pound, 15 ounces, you're still getting a very light setup because that's a very light binding. Now, when it comes to fit, this year, I think they dialed in the fit a little bit better. This felt more true to size, like Burton boots usually do. Maybe a quarter of a size too large, but definitely doable. And with this thinner liner, it's not gonna pack out as much as normal Burton liners do. Now, I'm a 9, but I'm an E width. And while this step-on boot is wider around the toe box in a regular size than it used to be compared to the Photon, the Ion, and other Burton's first gen step-on boots, I still would definitely prefer the wide. And that much better fits my E width feet. Unfortunately, this year, there aren't spots for the Burton J-bar inserts. So if you're narrow, you're gonna have to rely on boot fitting foam that you're gonna have to put on the outside or the inside of the shell. There's no more Velcro connection with the Burton J-bars. And while this liner is thinner, you still can heat mold it pretty well and dial out your fit a little better. A lot of people don't do that, and they should. It really helps. Burton has a very standard insole here. There's nothing special about it. You'd do very well to upgrade to something like this new Footprint Game Changer with gel over the metatarsal and in the heel. It's a very soft, flexible, but very supportive, heat moldable insole. It's been my favorite lately, and what I'm going to be riding through the 2026-2027 season, and what I rode at the end of the 2026 season when I started testing these boots. Now, when it comes to the lacing system, this is a bit of a heartbreak for me, because it went from double BOA with one BOA for the upper, one BOA from the lower, to one BOA for the entire outer, and then one BOA for this large internal ankle harness. So for me, that's a huge deal breaker, because I can never get a single BOA properly tight on the outside. Some people can, some people like me can't. It always leaves one area too tight and one area too loose, and then the tightness can move from one area to another. Then that internal ankle harness, no matter how I tightened it, stiff, medium, or soft, caused pressure points. And it folded over right about here and put a lot of pressure on the top of my foot, right where you don't want it, and right where you shouldn't have it on step-on, because you're not using an ankle strap and it shouldn't cause any pressure points. What I really wish they would do is, instead of making an internal ankle harness that starts mid-foot and then goes almost all the way up to the BOA, they instead mimicked one of their Burton ankle straps, attached it to the outside of the tongue, and created an internal BOA, so it wouldn't be sticking out and it wouldn't pop out like this does, but instead it would be permanently attached to the tongue like this, with more support on the outside, less in the middle, and it would emulate what a binding ankle strap would do, give you more support. Right now, all this blue ankle harness does is prevent heel lift, but it does not help with support or response as much as I believe it should. But hey, this is pretty easy on and off. You have a pretty firm single Velcro liner here as well. And one thing to mention, they're using the new H5 BOA coiler, and it's different from the old BOAs. They turn differently. You can micro adjust now. So when they're loose, it's still a pain in the ass to get them tight. There's lots of cranking. But now if you go a little too far, you don't have to pop like you used to. All you have to do is dial back. It sounds a little funny. It sounds like they're broken, but they're not. And both BOAs don't turn the same way. You turn them into each other to tighten, and then you turn them away from each other to loosen. And same goes for the other BOA as well. Let's talk flex. You can see it's still soft, but it takes a lot more work for me to get it to here. And now I would say it's probably medium, bordering on medium soft. I would say more on the medium soft side, but it's definitely an improvement. I still think they could go further, especially right here. I'd love to see a stiffer flex right in this tongue area to give more ankle support, but also help with symmetry in response. Because what I've found is, while it's very responsive for how soft this flex is, because of that step-on technology that connects with the high back and really turns it quickly edge to edge, but it's slower on the toe side and faster on the heel side. I'd love for them to work on making this turning experience be more symmetrical. Now, with some step-on bindings, I believe you can change out this high back to basically a low back, and that would definitely improve symmetry. So might be something to look into, because the response is so much that you don't really need extra response in the high back. And I'd love to see them experiment with some low back options because of that. Now, when it comes to flex retention, there is less than past years. It looks like there's an articulating cuff, but now this is sewn together. So there is shell distortion on a forward flex. You do have a stiff backstay, and the liner has some reinforcement, but that's not enough to preserve this flex. I would say in 10 plus days, this is gonna start getting a lot softer. So this isn't the ideal boot for that 100-day-a-year rider. And when it comes to durability, they have done some good things, like putting rubber throughout the toe. Then they did almost like a laminate on the outside and then some harder rubber. So you are going to protect this boot pretty well around the sides, but it doesn't feel super durable. And one thing I've mentioned with all the Highshot and Wave Range boot reviews is this cover here will have to be cut off if you need to repair this outer boa. When it comes to shock absorption, you don't have much here. It looks like there's a lot more than there is, but there is considerably less shock absorption than my Nitro Profile Step-On TLS. That had much better shock absorption, but on the positive side, these Step-On bindings, every single one of them has a ton of EVA foam, so I didn't really miss the shock absorption once I stepped in, but there is better board feel than first gen Burton Step-On boots, as well as the Nitro Profile and Venture Step-On and Team Step-On boots. And when it comes to traction, you have Vibram soles. These have exceptional traction, and the traction doesn't change when the weather changes. If it gets really cold, you still have a lot of traction. When it comes to footprint, this is still very reduced. It seems to be about 29.7 centimeters long. However, there's always more overhang with the high back than the toe. So when you lean to a heel side carve, you only have that much, but the toe side carve can go much further. Same goes if you're using Burton boots. It has a boot out area right about here, but the toe can go much further. It's funny though, this looks like there's less overhang, but there isn't. So if you're gonna get these to carve with, make sure your board is wider than it should be for your boot size. Most carvers do that already, so you should be okay. However, these aren't really the boots you want if you're a really hard carver, but if you're really passionate about carving, I would suggest just going with regular bindings or flow bindings because there is very little overhang on the heel side. And when it comes to warmth, I couldn't really stress test this in super cold conditions, but they seem warm enough. They have that little thermal enhancement on the bottom that looks like tinfoil. So as it stands right now, it's hit or miss with that internal ankle harness. Some people don't mind it at all. Some people like me have lots of pressure point issues with it. So I strongly suggest you go try these on first before you buy. But I do like the fact that they were able to stiffen this up while still keeping a lot of that lateral flex. And they're giving these boots more of a traditional boot feel with a little less response in a softer flex that can still turn just about any board out there. So there are some positives too. You just have to figure out if you can get past some of the negatives.